If you've been paying attention to the Disney Lorcana metagame, you know that Sapphire Steel and Ruby Amethyst duked it out in the biggest Lorcana tournament to date that happened at the start of January 2024. Unfortunately, which many people might think, Ruby Amethyst did come out on top. 7 of the 8 top 8 decks were Ruby Amethyst. Matthew Peddle, Sapphire Steel, was the only non-Ruby Amethyst player in the top 8. But you can go to my Dreamborn Inc. links that are in the description to check out their deck list, and you can also see the finals match that I commentated over live if you're interested in that gameplay. But we're going to go ahead and show you a competitive match where I faced the 3rd ranked player on the Pixelborn leaderboard, a Grandmaster, that was piloting a variation of Matthew Peddle's Sapphire Steel deck, and I was using Ruby Amethyst. And we're going to break that match down a little bit more in depth for you if you're interested in some of that more competitive gameplay. Again, make sure you check out these matches for 2 of the best players to pilot these decks in that finals. It was a 1K tournament. The winner took home 500. I think Peddle took home 300. So again, really good showing from both of those players. But let's go ahead and take a look at this match on the ranked mode. So the person that I ended up playing was Jack Shadows. He's currently 3rd on the leaderboard, and he was playing Sapphire Steel. So let's see how his Sapphire Steel deck fared up against my Ruby Amethyst. So for the sake of trying to explain things a little bit more in depth and go through the interactions a little bit more, I'm not going to be cutting out too much out of this matchup, and I'm not going to be speeding it up. This is the only match in this video though, so hopefully you get some good learning points from it. To start off, we do mulligan away some of our uninkables and cards that were not going to be immediately useful and cards that we might want to see later on in the game, like the Maui. We don't necessarily want to ink that card unless we absolutely have to, but Maui is actually somewhat useful in this matchup, whereas like in the mirror match, it's not really so useful, especially because I'm running the small Pinocchios, which by the way, the deck list will be at the end of the video here. Because we're running the small Pinocchio, the Maui does have extra value because on 7 ink you can drop Pinocchio, exert a character, and then drop the Maui. So you want to draw those later in the game. Anyways, we do get a good turn 1 in the Olaf, but unfortunately we don't have anything for turn 2. The opponent just inked the bell and passed. Because we drew a mini Surfer, we're going to go ahead and ink our 3-drop Crab since we'd rather play Surfer here. And now that we know we're against Sapphire Steel, we don't necessarily need the Crab to pump up an evasive to take out an opposing evasive if we're going up against like one of those decks that play evasives. So in this instance, the Minnie Mouse 1 drop is actually a good draw because it's good ink. We're going to draw out the smash hopefully by playing this Minnie Mouse, and what I'm trying to do here is bait my opponent to not ramp with Fishbone Quill if they do have it, because this is the traditional play, turn 3 Fishbone Quill, right? But this Minnie Mouse is a big threat that they probably want to take care of because it'll allow me to generate a lot of lore very quickly if it's not dealt with. But they do the Fishbone Quill, so that's totally fine. They're just going to go ahead and dump a card, and we are going to continue on the aggro road, getting as much lore as possible. With the 1 ink they generate off the Fishbone Quill, they do fire the cannons, and this is a very telegraphed play to me, where I'm like, okay, next turn they could ink twice, puts them at 6, which means they likely have a Tinkerbell hard cast, which would deal 1 damage to everything on board, finishing off the Minnie Mouse. So instead of smashing, because they did ink a smash, instead of smashing a Minnie Mouse, they're opting for this play, which does get me 1 full quest with the Minnie Mouse, but in hindsight, I guess it's not too consequential. But the opponent is aggressively dumping their hand, which again leads me to believe they have a whole new world. So I am playing kind of cautiously. I want to keep some cards in hand, but I don't want to overextend and generate like a bunch of cards if I can avoid it. And so you can see me play out the 1-drop Minnie Mouse in this instance, where normally that would be ink. But as expected, the opponent does indeed drop a Tinkerbell. Now I'm in a weird spot. I have to either try to play around a whole new world or the Tinkerbell. So I hard cast this Friends on the other side, because singing it would put my Maleficent exerted without a wave that I would guarantee to bounce it back. Like I did end up drawing into a Mim card, but I didn't want to sing the Friends and then have the Tinkerbell take out the Maleficent and then get free range on taking out either my Olaf or Minnie Mouse as well. That's just a 2-for-1 that I don't need to trade into. So that's why I made that very awkward play. The opponent plays a Grab Your Swords, and I'm like, okay, are they going to hardcast a whole new world? No, they drop a Beast Tragic Hero, and then they ink their final card. So maybe they didn't want to play a whole new world because they didn't want to play me into advantage. So they just end up saying the Beast Tragic Hero is enough since they saw me ink the Teeth and Ambitions. We're going to go ahead and drop this Maui, and this is exactly what I mean when I was talking about earlier, saying Maui does actually have pretty good value in this match. Now, unfortunately, being not yet on 7 ink, I couldn't drop the Maui and the Pinocchio to take out the beast before it could draw 2. But taking out the Tinkerbell there is excellent value because this Maui is essentially going to go 2 for 1. The Fishbone Quill off of the beast here gets them, the draw off of the beast here gets them 2 cards. One that they can ink with Fishbone Quill, which was likely an uninkable, and then they drop the Hiram to continue to dig deeper into their deck. So pretty solid plays from the opponent, making sure that they're keeping up with the card advantage in the best way possible. They definitely have some kind of play, as telegraphed by them potentially playing that one card they keep hovering over, but they opt to just pass. And I'm like, okay, this is actually really good for me because now I can drop this Pinocchio and take out the beast, shutting off their draw engine here. But they do still have a Hiram, and I'm still at risk of them drawing into a whole new world. But at least now they don't have the Singer on board. I'm going to then go ahead and drop the Rabbit. We draw into another Maui, and since we have no way to recycle the Pinocchio right now, I'm just going to go ahead and keep inking so that I can kind of keep up, because I do want this Maleficent Dragon to be live if possible. One thing to note, that this Ursula in my hand, while it is a good card, it's not going to draw me anything if the opponent never quests. So keeping the Hiram on field is kind of useful, because if they play an item and they quest with the Hiram, it'll put them at 1 lore, which turns my Ursula online to draw, but they would get a draw 2 off of banishing their item. They do indeed have another beast though, and that's a bit problematic. I'm still 2 ink away from dropping this Maleficent Dragon, which means unless I can draw into another Teeth and Ambitions, this beast is going to generate them some advantage. Now this crab is an interesting draw. We can drop this, beef up our Rabbit, and then take out the Hiram, shutting off a potential item draw engine, and then quest with the Pinocchio, since we know that the opponent is not going to be crashing their beast into that Pinocchio. The opponent's hand is now 4 cards, which is problematic. You can see just how quickly this deck can generate advantage, but they are down 9 lore. And again, I've talked about this before in my other videos. Ruby Amethyst is kind of like, this is why I love this deck. It's kind of a funny deck where it's not necessarily focused purely on advantage. It has aggro aspects, it has control aspects, it has card advantage aspects. It's a really well-rounded deck, and it's why it's one of the best decks in the format. Anyways, the opponent opts to just cast a Grab Your Swords, keeping their Beast Draw engine online. So they are playing very passively and in a bit more of a control-esque manner. If they do have a whole new world, they're definitely keeping it. They probably want to generate more advantage before they cast it, or they just might not have it. Now at this point, I will probably go for the Yzma play to draw 2, because I do want to have more available ink in order to cast my dragon next turn, but I could also draw into a Teeth and Ambitions. Now usually you wouldn't make this gamble play, but I was going for more inkables, and I just so happened to draw into the Teeth and Ambitions, which is really good. Well, I wouldn't say really good, but it's good enough because it's going to shut off an extra draw for the opponent. We do end up inking our Mim Fox there, and then shut off the Beast Tragic Hero by using that Teeth and Ambitions there. And we're looking pretty even, almost dead even, right? The opponent does have a 5 Singer on board in the Beast Tragic Hero though, so another Grab Your Swords or a Whole New World would kind of shake things up. But they opt to drop a Cinderella, and I love to see that card. Ruby Amethyst loves to see that if you're playing the Maleficent Dragon, because you just know that as soon as you drop that Maleficent Dragon, any abilities that Cinderella has is just nullified. The resist +2 doesn't matter. They ink a Bell, and they just end up passing their turn. So they didn't want to opt to trade their Beast Tragic Hero by questing with it and me trading it out with the Yzma potentially. So at this point now I'm going to ink that Maleficent that I drew, take out the Cinderella. Now I am firmly in control, up to 12 lore, have 2 double questers on board, and it demands an answer. This Beast Tragic Hero isn't doing anything other than sitting on board, likely waiting to sing a Whole New World or something, but the opponent reveals they did not indeed have the Whole New World, or they inked it with Fishbone Quill earlier on, not wanting to wheel me into advantage without having more advantage themselves. So we're going to go ahead and quest with the Maleficent Dragon. Pinocchio tap down the beast, drop the Mim Fox to bounce back the Maleficent Dragon, so we have another targeted removal for follow-up next turn if needed, or in the future turns. And the opponent, unless they top deck Whole New World, which will be forced to hardcast, is kind of dead in the water here. They're going to reveal their top deck, and then I think they just end up scooping it up, knowing that we have game on board. So I kind of give them the well played a little early. Once I see them thinking, they must know that there's nothing that they can really do. So yeah, they just ink and pass. I guess they're going to try to play it out one more turn to see what they draw, but we do finally drop the Ursula. It doesn't draw because the opponent has no lore. It's now 15-0, and at this point I think the opponent finally reveals their drop in the Cinderella, and then they just end up scooping it up. So on screen here is the deck list that we used. I have changed this more recently. I call this 1.0, but it's probably more like 2.0 or 1.5. But let me know in the comment section below if you've made it this far, if you enjoyed that breakdown, that gameplay. Would you have made any different choices? What do you think of the deck list that I used here? What would you change? I mean, I'm always changing things up myself. I'm open to suggestions. So once again, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Quantum is out.